confederation is more of a, like, building contacts, building bridges. I want all of you to know that there's nothing to be ashamed of, to talk to other people, to have connection with Assyrians from all over Europe. And it's a great opportunity for us all to be able to come here to Brussels and to meet other Assyrians. From my perspective, I was in Assyria a few weeks ago in southeast Turkey, so it's called Turabdin, at my father's village in Anhed, and it was my second time, and I found it very mixed. It was very mixed emotions, because you feel at home, but at the same time you feel like you're a visitor, you're a stranger. It's no longer your country, but it's still your land. So it's very mixed feelings, but the thing that for me was a bit of a, you can call it a light, a bit of hope in the darkness, was the children. Because we still have some children living there, and I met quite a few of them. Felt sorry for them for the way they lived, but they're happy. They don't compare their lives to the lives that we have in Europe. They're very happy with their lives. And even though I know that there might come a day when our people have a history of being murdered and slaughtered, and even though I know that there may come a day when even these children will face the same destiny and become our angels instead of our future, I find them to be a sort of a hope and a light in this darkness. So for me, who recently came from Assyria, I feel very happy to be here and part of this confederations and to meet you guys. Starting off, first of all, we have the schedule here, and I would like to welcome, first of all, the President of the Assyrian Confederation of Europe, Her Excellency Adila Al-Amri.
Shalom Aleichem. I will speak in Assyrian a few words, and later on I will speak in English for our guests. بشكل عام حبل يقرن حضور يقرن لكم منشن لكنيشو جامنويو دو حيو لدحيو دي أخروي تقولي فيه. صحيتهم دمخو زنو تأكيدوا من أقرأوا ثراحوكم حضريتوا أعمينا دوبيتوا لن أرن يفخو معشريتوا علينا ودوبيتوا لن تشموا مميو بثخو لزوروا أخروي بأوروبا وبوثرون. لاتيو ميري فصولي ما كولا حيود دا حيودين confederation ولاتيو ميري معوضي بيهاني 40 سنة ماولا في الحونة أمضوي بوريفي 40 سنة في الحونة مهلين من الموثن مقبل ونيشي هو مثلثة ومسوزة لسبوط أمضويته هنك كنت مولفة لن الرقدة هنك كنت مولفة لن وبشروا بيتقلن بدل حميو مع القوية هنك مولفة لن كنا عامو وقعديني على مرموث المين مولفة لن كلوز محرمينا لشان أصروا هيرو لها تقامك كبيرة تودي ساقي اللي هو زنو هو يحوبك رفع حنا مصنوي ودقيقة تكتني أرضي ومع عمينا حضور يقرن إنك قمت تدزينهم لوثر والأوثر بثر بالنافل نافيل شطو نظر صدام بشيء وعمينا من بغداد والأربيل من مهاجر عبور مرطلي غالب سيحوي ومتخالصي ومن ديكتاتور سيحوي ومدينة يقلب كبل عويش مع متهدول لبه بثر مدزينه شعته بشعته كحزيونه وصبراوه كم يبادل قطع يقشي وأكل دوري كثمانوي كماكي وعميدا فاشلو عميدا لوكو بتياقن بقليمو اتكتي وخليطو عمهرب أو عمكردوي ما قتلت هاوي مو أدون بيس بقشني حاروي وميلت كحوزينا أديوما وعامينا كتلة صبرو وحميلة هاي منوثو دماركو حيلو وهاي منوثو يوزر ردحتيف مرلي عم حدودي كلوزابلان جيسو نفقلان مورو مرلي عم حدودي كلوزابلان بتصوبي مولفينا ولي شونيتا مرلي حدودي كلوزب ماركوينا بتشلطونوثو لسنلو تحت الشلطونوثو دا عرب أدكرلو يعيشينا وميدانو حبرم يقري ميدي حاثويو وميدي حاثانو احنا بقريفي كلوزم معونين عليه ورخشو حاثانو يهيمو نثو حفتافي كلوزم احنا هوينا وقوليبي كلوزم احنا مجمعين على لشو دوسن قريفي ومجمعين على لوليبو تا اوروبا ببروكسل لشان لو ميدانو احيو دتو عامينا كلوزم ملتمي وحيلثي الزوزثي ونوليدج خدكمي ونتورك كتي لشان قدرينا بزبنو كريو موضعينا لا أوريفوي وعمينا كل زملة كليمو دهيتكم صادرلي ودهيتكم دابرلي وميدانو كلوز بهيمونوثو مينابي وميدانو كلوز لومينا كفينا ميني وميدانو كلوز دويلا رغشو قويو ايبي أثمل إنا قد تطلب لي خاطر لي برثيني نغيلا فش بشلومو وحكي لك هنا حبرك علي مثل هولندية كم شايري مينا كلي إيما خلايك وخزام كما داروا علي إيمي كزار دكتو قدمي حيروثو الأوثر ألا تتحمش شني توخو مولفينا أنا عيمينا أوثر كتيودينا لو بس مشغولين عم يخبروا أفرو إلو دمينا فري أسيريا I will try to say a few words in English. Welcome all of you to the Convention of the Assyrian Confederation of Europe. This day is for the federations very important because we want to learn from our guests, to learn from all of you what we have to do, when we have to do, and how we should do things. Because the situation of the Assyrians in Assyria has been very bad the last 10 years. After Saddam has disappeared, when I visit Baghdad, Erbil and Hadra, the Assyrians had hoped that they could live with the Arab and the Kurds, with their neighbors. They were happy that the dictator left. For the last few years, when we visit Assyria, this has changed, because the man and the woman in Assyria were afraid to speak. They were afraid to tell what's going on. And trust me, they were whispering. They were whispering what the KDP, what the Peshmerga was doing with them. They were whispering about that they were not secure, that the government in Baghdad was not taking care of them. Whispering about their hopes. But now, there is a new hope in Assyria, because this whispering made them realize that there is no future for the Assyrians in Iraq if they know their own protection forces, if they have their own universities, if they do not have their own government. And this hope, we in the diaspora should help them with this hope. We have to take their voice, this whispering, and bring them here and say it to the European Parliament, to the journalists, to the NGOs, what the Assyrians really want in Assyria. A few weeks ago, I was at the United Nations, and I had the possibility to speak, and I met Thomas there, and I told them, imagine that you were in Scotland 10 years ago, and now, after 10 years, you go to Scotland, and what you see is that 4 million Scottish people have left Scotland. Imagine that those people have disappeared. And imagine that no European journalist is writing about it. And can you imagine that no president is talking about it? And imagine that everybody, all those 4 million people, lives everywhere in Europe. Well, this is
what happened to the Assyrians in Iraq. 4 million Assyrians disappeared from Iraq. And no Arab president is talking about. Not any journalists are writing about. And nobody, no any NGOs are writing reports about what's going on or what happened to the Assyrians. And now we have to stop pointing to them. Today we have to talk about what should we do to change this. And we need you, your advices, your knowledge, your time to teach us, the Confederation, what to do and when. Please give us as much as you can, because for the situation of the Syrians today needs a lot. And we are prepared, the young board of the Confederation is prepared to work very hard and to be the voice of the Assyrians in Assyria. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antia. Our next speaker is the head of the Assyrian Federation of Belgium. Please welcome Mr. Nahir El-Griou.
Dear guests, dear participants, welcome. We are very happy to have you here in Brussels. We were very excited to prepare this convention on behalf of the Assyrian Federation of Belgium. Just a few words about our federation. As you may know, it's a new federation for an ancient community. We have Assyrian in Belgium for decades, for 40, 50 years even, but this federation is new and we're trying to do our best to strengthen the Assyrians in Belgium and to show that we still exist, that we are present, and we are working on behalf of the Assyrian diaspora of Europe and on behalf of our community in the homeland. We've been working very hard for this second convention in Brussels, and we wanted to be in Brussels, in our federations, in the Confederation, because Brussels is the heart of Europe, and Brussels is the seat of the European institutions. It is here that we need to focus our lobby, our work, our presentations to the European institutions. During the last year, I had the opportunity, on behalf of the Assyrian Federation of Belgium and the Confederation of Europe, to show reports to members of the Parliament, the European Parliament, to staffers, to people that work there. And they are interested, they want to know what is going on in our homeland, in Assyria. This is why we truly believe that we need to work harder than we are doing now. And here in Brussels, we need representation, we need someone, something, a structure to work in Brussels. I will say a few words in Assyrians. Шемер кулеху дахту, гарбе все хайна ктат варке медикоthim шахфе, ешкун 13 حورانك دوثن بفرنسا جروب كابيلو دوثن مودر تشيكي كتلان خد خزاف وتحستو عطرتو كتلان غالبه مبلونك دوثن وعسريستني كتلان قالك بينا مخدوري وكتلان صابرو وشاتو حطوستني نجحينا بكونفنشنالو كتلان نيسم مودازلو كل شاتو حزنا حدودي لوخينا حدودي يلفينا حدودي ولا يعطيا غالبك حزنا لما دوسوي أو لك مرحنا لازم خاطر ودي غالبك كل ياخد أكسوتو. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nahir. Next up, we have a Dutch journalist with us. His name is, let me see how to pronounce it correctly, Arnold Karskens.
Thank you. I have a very small speech because I'm one who doesn't like to listen to long speeches. So, just to introduce myself, I'm Arnold Karskens. I'm a war correspondent from the Netherlands. I visited Iraq many times during the Iraq War, 87. I was in Baghdad in 91, 2003. And then later on, did a lot of research on Frans van Anraat, the guy that delivered poisonous gas to Saddam Hussein, and what was thrown on Halabja. And the last time I was in Iraq was in Mosul this spring, during the fights in the western part of the city. So, Attia asked me, can you point out short 3 things? What changed in your eyes in the situation concerning Syria? What do you worry about? Can it go better? And what role should Assyria play in Iraq? Well, What changed is the exodus of the Syrians. When I was in 2003, I remember I spoke to some Flemish priests. I congratulated him with the loss of Saddam Hussein. And then he already said, things are not going to get better. And I remember talking to a Dutch priest. It was in Homs in Syria. And everybody was happy about the Arabic Spring. And he said, it's Arabic autumn. And then we get a winter. Maybe then we can get the spring. As you know, if you live here in Europe, a lot of Arabs say, well, we are being discriminated, etc., and we are in a poor situation. But if you compare that with the situation of the Syrians in the Middle East, there was a lot of people that are really discriminated. I visited Mosul in 2008, when there was still some left, and they already had problems with the other ones, the Sunnis and the Shias. And I went to the Dinafeh villages, and I went back this spring. And they already had bad times in all those years. And then I saw all the houses, they were all burned. And I asked my interpreter, what happened? I said, well, the ISIS destroyed a lot of houses. But when the ISIS left, the houses were burned. You see? So don't think with Islamic State leaving that region, things are going to get better for the Assyrians. I think, and that's one of my conclusions, every time I come back in that part of the world, it's getting worse for the Assyrians. Can it go? What do I worry about and what can it go better? Okay, first what I worry about. Just talked about the situation here. 2 years ago, I was at the European Parliament with some other people, Armenians, if I said it correct. And there was one guy from the European Parliament. He was from the EVP, that's the biggest faction of the European Parliament. Christians. And he just told us blindly, don't think we are going to support you that much. Really, he said that, you know. There are more powerful things. They prefer to put the money to the big people over there, the Sunnis and Shias, and give it to the Christian minorities. So, I wanted to say so if you're here in Europe, don't count on the European Union, don't count on the European Parliament. I always say that's cruel. That's almost a dagger. You know what a dagger is? A big knife. They put it in your bag because you are relying on the Christians in Europe, but they won't support you. Unless. So, you're a small country. Like all your country, people country. People. And that doesn't mean you have to lose the battle. You know, I just compare it with Israel. You know, it's a small state as well, and they know how to survive. But in order to survive, you need two extremely important points. First, you have to unite. Being an outsider, I talk with Christians from that part of the world, and I can get along with them all, but they cannot go along with each other. So that's your main problem. I was war correspondent many times in Latin America, and they always had this un pueblo unido jamás será vencido. United people can't be defeated. So if you want to win, if you want to save your own people, unite. And sometimes it's difficult. But if it's difficult, replace the old leaders with the new ones. Get the young ones together. So you have a new generation of people that, you know, can work together. And so, united. And you need support from the outside. And you should count on the United States, maybe on Russia. Those big states, they're in favor of the Christians, and they can really support you. So don't count on Europeans, yeah, in Europe, sorry, don't count on them. Go for America and go, if you want, go for Russia. Okay, last point. What role should Assyria play in Iraq? Okay, claim your own land. Yeah, just claim it. Just say, okay, this is us. You know, do it tactfully. Yeah, don't throw the put a minefield around it or something like, or don't try to fight your way in. But you just can claim. You can just say, this is it. So you make a fist that way. And there's another one. Kick asses. You people are too polite. If you're Japanese, you always say yes, 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 thank you, and like this, you're whispering. Kick asses. And if you talk to the Europeans, tell them just straight in the face, because Europeans are not brave people. Most of them are cowards. Just say, you don't know your history. 80 years ago, you made it possible that people were destroyed. And now you're doing the same with us. Understand? Yeah, during the Second World War, the Jews were almost finished. And now it's the policy of the European to do almost the same with you. And just tell them in the sense that if they don't help you, they discriminate you, and they're part of the problem. They're part of the genocide played on the Christians in that part of the Middle East. Thank you.
Thank you, Ono. Now we welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Tommaso Nodari from the UNPO.
Thank you, everyone, and good morning. And thank you for inviting the UNPO to this event. I'm Tommaso Nodari, and I'm Program Director at the UNPO, but I'm actually here on behalf of the General Secretary, Mr. Bustakim, who unfortunately couldn't make it. I found this last speech very interesting because Mr. Karskens used some of the points that I also wanted to make at the end, but at the same time in other things I think he sees the thing, like the problem, very differently. So I hope my speech won't be too boring, coming just after his. So I work for the UNPO, as I said, but not every one of you might know what the UNPO is. It's the Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization. It's an organization that represents the interests of minorities, indigenous peoples, non-recognized states, and occupied territories from all around the world. But what is most important is that it's an organization that was created by these communities themselves, who came together and created a secretariat to represent their interests in international arenas and to help these communities reach the international arena. The Assyrian community has been a member of our organization since the very beginning, since its first year, 1991. And we have done a number of things in relationship with the Assyrian community. In particular, in the latest years, focusing on the community that lives in the part that now is under Iraq, let's say. And in particular, this has implied 3 different missions in the past 3 years, to which unfortunately I did not participate myself. But 2 of my colleagues went there with partner organizations, and this led to the publication of a few reports, which I hope are not among the NGO reports that Tia referred to that are not strong enough. But anyway, I think have at least some interesting points of reflection and some recommendations to the various actors involved in the region, so Iraq, the Kurdistan Regional Government, and the international community. But also to the communities themselves, because I think it's important, and I like the approach of this event. Let's try to look what we can do better instead of just complaining that the situation is not improving. So I'm very impressed, actually. Officially, our member is the Assyrian Universal Alliance, but this has not stopped us from working with other groups, and we are pretty open. We've worked recently with ATIA, last year with the Women's Federation, Assyrian Federation of Sweden, and ATIA we organized a conference at the European Parliament, and recently she spoke at the UN with us, and parliamentarian Johan Dalmkana spoke at our General Assembly 2 years ago, so we are happy to work a bit with all actors But I have to say that unfortunately we are a small organization, we have little money, little human resources, and therefore we can help achieve results, but we are not going to change the situation, of course. We will keep doing our best, and I hope the outcomes of this conference will be shared with us somehow, and that we can work together further, but of course it is like the policymakers that can actually help our others. Looking at the current crisis in the Middle East, and in particular in the Iraqi parts, I see two different issues that are blurred together and on purpose by many people confused and mixed to take advantage somehow of the Assyrian community and of other components in Iraq. One is the humanitarian catastrophe, which is, well, I mean, it comes also from 20 years of instability and in general from not an easy last half of a century. But in particular also from the last couple of years and from the so-called Islamic State and so on, that also led to a lot of displacement, and displacement also gives some problems. I read about problems in access to education in your mother tongue and these kind of issues. But then there are human rights issues that might seem the same, but they are a bit different, and this is the possibility to have one's freedom of religion respected, so to remain Christians and be proud of it. And this has been violated by other things, like by signs being put on doors, like in the good old days of the Christian persecutions 2,000 years ago. But there are many other human rights violations. I know of personal property that was violated. Someone was saying people fled, left their houses, but then the houses were burned down or their goods were pillaged. And these to me are very different, and they're also connected to the demographic manipulation, which is due to the people fleeing and moving maybe to Europe, to the United States, to Australia, but actually also to transfers of population and to the fact that certain groups took advantage to like reorganize the territory to their advantage. And more in general, I think the most important human right that is involved here, that is a very sensitive one, but there is one that the UNPO focuses a lot on, is self-determination. Self-determination means many things, and unfortunately it is always interpreted as separatism, which makes our work very difficult. But in this sense, we try to fight this stigma and teach that self-determination is also the possibility to preserve one's culture, one's language, one's religion, and one's territory as well. But this doesn't mean kicking everyone else out or anything, but just it's more a matter of identity. And this, I think, is what your case is about. Survival, of course, but then self-determination, the possibility to preserve what makes you a unique community that has been there forever. Well, this is one of the points in which I'm not sure I agree with the previous speaker, is that Europe, it's true, Europe is in a difficult moment itself, and probably it will be for a long time. But I do think that it is an interesting actor to consult, and so I welcome the idea of the coordinator of the group in Belgium to work more with the European institutions. And this June we actually had a conference that was focusing on, that followed the mission this spring, and that was focusing on the situation in the region. It was called Buznai's Nineveh, the European response, in which we tried to discuss the situation. A lot of parliamentarians from Iraq, including Mr. Khanna, came, but then we invited also actors from Europe. This is because we were analyzing, actually one of the partners is an American who is based in the States, is very American, he's from Texas. But he himself was saying that in the coming few years, the foreign policy of the US might be a bit confused for evident reasons, and so that maybe the EU could be a more useful actor. But of course, it's absolutely subjective, and also the role of Russia is interesting and subjective. So I think if you target both, you will have more chances. However, I was also asked to give some suggestions and tips from the perspective of an organization that works with several groups that are in difficult situations. They're obviously different. All our members have very different struggles, but in common there is definitely discrimination, margination, and a lot of sufferance. So my points are, they're not very positive, I think, so I will try then to conclude in a bit more of a positive light. But there are, I think, some major issues that make it very difficult to reach international institutions and actually get help. And the first one is very crude. It's competition. Unfortunately, the world is a very nice place, but it's also a very bad place. And there are dozens of communities that are in very, very difficult situations and that are suffering every day. And unfortunately, the money that states send around and also the political help that they give is limited. And so there is an actual competition to reach these people. And it's not about we're suffering more. Unfortunately, there are a lot of elements that are involved and that you have to try to turn to your advantage. I mean, by working for this organization, I have discovered about, more about cases that everyone knows about, like, I don't know, Tibet or Palestine, than about cases that some people know about but that not everyone are familiar with, and the Assyrians are among them, I think. And then even about communities that nobody had ever heard about, and that even when I speak now to friends, nobody knows. So there is competition, and this is definitely the hardest problem. The second point, I think, is that the Middle East, to most people, to the general public, to the superficial public, is too complicated. People don't understand how it works, and to be honest, it is very complicated even for people who work in the sector. And so, some people, when they hear Middle East, when they hear Iraq, they're like, too complicated, sorry, and they kind of close their mind to, they don't receive information anymore. And then there is what I said before, the taboo about self-determination, or anyway about minority groups making claims, because people are, and especially politicians, are scared of self-determination, of separatism, of borders being blurred, and so on. We've definitely seen it in these weeks, well, for the referendum in Kurdistan as well, but also here in Europe for the referendum in Catalonia, and how everyone closed like a shell, even in front of violence that was really not called for. So these are three problems. The suggestions that I can give, the first one is actually the same that was said by the speaker before me, and it's work with other groups. I know it's very difficult. I know that you might have different ideologies, different traditions, different generations, different objectives, but it is true that when the same politician gets to meet two different groups from the same community that say two different things, this loses a lot of power, and instead to go as a united group, and I guess this confederation has also this purpose, is much more powerful. And also, I think what would be interesting, not always, but for certain objectives to be reached, is to work with other communities that are your neighbors and that share a difficult situation with you. I'm thinking of small communities like the Yazidi that actually have got a bit the spotlight in the last couple of years. You will remember that two women last year won the Sakharov Prize, which is the prize of the European Parliament for human rights and freedom of expression. But also the Kakais, and there are many others. I think that networks of communities that are in a difficult situation are more powerful because they give the idea that people are working together to improve the situation. And then the third thing is, especially for example if you want to work in Brussels, use us, call us, meet us, we can help. As I said, we have very limited time, money and resources, but we do have a lot of experience in working with the European institutions and partly with the UN and in other places, so maybe we can share something that can be useful or help you get access to certain people. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommaso. Before you sit, I would like you to step up again. Okay. Because we're going to have a panel debate, and it includes Tommaso and Arnold as well, and Artea too. So please, if you can come up here by the steps, or if you want to jump, it's up to you. So, we're going to ask you a few questions, and it's not only me, it's also free for the audience, for the people who are present today to ask the questions. But first of all, I would like to ask Artea, you talked about the media, that they don't talk about a situation very much. From your perspective, why is it? Why doesn't the media speak so much about the Assyrians?
What I have noticed is that we are not good to sell our issue to the media. We are not quick enough, we are not concrete enough, and we are not clear enough in what we want to say and in what we want to ask. Of course, they all know that they kill us, they hurt us, they destroyed the Assyrians, there have been a genocide. But if we are not clear in asking what our nation wants in Assyrian, You see that journalists love to write a nice story one time, but the second time they are asking, do you have something new? Do you have something concrete? And this is what we are not good in it. And I really hope that the bridge we are building between Europe and Assyria will give us more information and more concrete points that we can use in the media in Europe. And I will just give you one example that we produced a report a few days ago, 2 weeks ago, and this report was something concrete, something very clear in what happened there and what we are asking. So we have to be better and better with these things that we can facilitate the journalists.
And I imagine from Arnold's perspective, we need to be united too. Isn't that true, Arnold?
Yeah, you have to be united, otherwise journalists, they are not the smartest people, they get mixed up. A journalist is a very simple person. You don't have to be educated to be a journalist, because you always have to ask what's going on and where you get the answer. So it's very important, like it is, that you have a message to say, and that you say, okay, go to Assyria, who can I talk to? And I know we have contact many times, because when I was there I tried to meet people, and sometimes it took a long time. I had this time, but if you have a professional television crew costing 1,000, 1,500 euros a day, you're not going to wait for a week. That's impossible. So make sure that you have people over there in that part of the world that can pick up journalists, that can tell them what's going on, that can make the contact. And that can be an old one, a new one, you know, you don't have to be educated for it. Somebody that can fix that sort of connections right away. It's very, very, very important. And that people know where to find him or her. That's one, to get attention, yeah, just to want to have attention, because that's very important as well, because many things are going on. So what I would say, if you know the history, point out that you're a victim. Europeans, Americans, they want to see the victim. They want to see what's really going on. So that's one of the reasons I've got a foundation as well, that I'm trying to get statements from the Syrians and from other people that they were brutally or tortured or raped by Dutch jihadis. So that makes you a victim, and then people, their heart is always with the victim. So if you get more attention if you really play the role, not say, oh, nothing's going on, you're well. No, just tell them, yes, we are victims. Don't be shy. Another one is, I just saw it on your website, that you try to get a primary school in Istanbul. That's not possible. I was reading about it, yeah? Assyrians. What I would do if I was Assyrians, I would tell the Dutch government, okay, if we don't get a school in Istanbul, then we don't want a Turkish primary school in the Netherlands. Just say, forbid it. We want our school, and if we don't get it, you don't get a Turkish school in Europe. You see, that's, and then you get the attention, and just demonstrate. Just if the build one, just demonstrate. Why do they get a school and why don't we get a school in Istanbul? I'm sure you make the news. And that sort of creative thinking, yeah, is very, very, very important.
And Tommaso, from your perspective, what do you think the Assyrians, in particular from Europe, can do more and can do better to make their voice heard, like all over the world?
Well, definitely those in Europe can work together as a group, unite, as we said. And I think it would be really important to have a concrete campaign with objectives. I mean, the situation obviously is always evolving, but we know now what the core elements that you can tell politicians are. And so I would definitely create a strategy that targets both the European institutions and national government, especially of those countries that have more leverage, more power, Security Council members, although even the UK is quite in a difficult situation right now. and try to get them to speak up about specifically this situation. I think this can involve meetings, but also bringing witnesses, people who have recently fled, because it's always much more concrete. And then, of course, for each of the issues, rape, violence, and so on, it's very sad and crude to put it this way once again, but for example, if you bring a woman who was a victim of rape and you go to an MP who is a woman, for example, she will be much more touched. It's really bad to say it, especially as a man, but unfortunately you have to use these kind of tricks, or like use children, or, I mean, there are definitely elements to try to be a bit more powerful. Christianity is definitely an element that is important, and I think that compared to other communities, it has anyway gathered into the sympathy of a good chunk of the European population. Definitely most of these EPP, center-right Christian parties, and a lot of, let's say, the more conservative Christian society in Europe, but it's mostly the sympathy. Unfortunately, I don't think it has reached the political leverage somehow. So I think you have to add something to the Christianity, which of course is something that people remember, and even from, I don't know, members of my family who haven't ever worked in the sector, I hear, oh yeah, the Christians in the Middle East, it's such a sad situation. But I think you have to push it further.
Is there anyone from the audience who has a question? You have the opportunity to ask them now. Otherwise, yeah?
Yes, about Christianity. It's not always your advantage to be a Christian here in Europe if you have a problem. Because they say, you're Christian, how can you discriminate it? You see? Understand what I mean? That they first go to Sunni or Shia or whatsoever, because they think, well, he's Muslim, he must be discriminated. So, don't think, and a lot of people think, well, we're Christians in Europe or in the States, we are always welcome and we'll listen to it. No, you have, like, our man here said, you have to add something. Yeah? Be the victim, be very strong, and that's important as well. Don't give up, don't do one demonstration and say, okay, this is enough for this year. Now, it's a very long struggle, and it's a long way. But you have a good start. You have a good story. So if you continue in the way we just discussed, there's a chance. But it's a battle ahead.
Yeah, no, to this element of like not just doing a protest once every year or something, I agree that we have, like, you have to be consistent and regular somehow, because if you do an event every year or every 2 years and that's all people hear about, they will just think that it's a regular problem rather than an urgent one. So I know that most of you, I guess, have jobs or things to do or studies or families, but it has to be like a strong and high-based strategy.
I love the point that Arnold just mentioned, that you have to be, I'm going to use my own words, Arnold, be aggressive with your actions. And aggressive in the way that send not only one email to a journalist, but send 100 emails to a journalist. Or when a mosque, when a mosque established in Holland, go and say, why do they destroy our churches in Assyria? And why do they have the right to build here a church? And it touched me when you say you are too polite. And I noticed this in whole Europe when I visit our institutions. We are very polite, very nice, educated, and we don't want to destroy things of being naughty or whatever. So I think this is very important, and what you just said, like, don't organize only one thing a year, but try to be always with concrete and bring new actions during the year.
You were talking about this mosque. If they want to build a mosque, go to the news and say, okay, they can have a mosque, but we want our church back. You understand? That makes it very, very concrete, and I'm absolutely sure you get much sympathy for it, because then it gets very clear. It's better than big demonstration, we want our rights, because what are your rights? If you very close, say, okay, this is their mosque, and this is our church, and then maybe the mosque, we want this back. With a picture, maybe you can send the journalist to it, and then people start thinking.
Speaking of Christianity, I leave the question open for any of you to answer. Do you find any risk when the Assyrian people only name themselves as Christians?
I will give you an example that has at least put us, the board, on thinking about it, how to deal with it. Is that we visit, I think it was 1 or 2 years ago, the European Parliament, some few important persons, and that we were telling them what the Assyrians wanted in Assyria. Is that he answered me, he said, well, a few weeks ago your patriarch came and we spoke with him and he really didn't mention what you were saying, so well, I'm sorry. And I looked to him and I said, which one? He said, what do you mean? He said, well, we have 7 or 8 patriarchs. So a lot of European institutions do not know that we have a lot of churches, different patriarchs, different priests and bishops. And if one come and visit them, they used to think that this is the spokesman of the Assyrian community in Iraq. And we have to use the Christianity, as Arnold and of course Tommaso said, and connect it with what we want for the future in our homeland.
For Europe, it's not only that you're Christians, but that resembles a culture Europeans have a good feeling with. So don't say we are extremely religious, because then people say, okay, well, I'm not very religious. But you have the sympathy, because with being Christian, with your culture, it's close to the culture of the Europeans and the Americans. That's what they like. They can place it. So Christianity, yes, but it's the Christian culture that you should promote.
Yeah, I agree. Somehow I see the element of Christianity as a double-edged sword in Europe, and as I said, it does attract a lot of sympathy from certain categories of the population and politicians. From others, it won't really make a difference, because if they want to help for human rights and so on, they will help everyone. And then there's again the problem that people are superficial and ignorant, and they might think that you guys arrived there with the Crusades or things like this. So the problem is that, yeah, to focus too much on the religion itself, on the Christian culture, I agree. Of course, it doesn't mean that you have to hide if you're very religious or things like this, but you shouldn't use it as like the main thing that you flag. I mean, your culture is rich of other elements. It doesn't have to be only about the religion, even though that's probably what makes you the most different in the region. But
any questions from the audience? Yes.
Këbejmë Gjallina Safro, atëre shuolani shmëdo judo dërshina ide naklaju dërshina aluni shodu Confederation u mëndawsat këbejna bħaqina. Këtluq sabru Safro, ide Gjallina bejdina shuole zëtër bejde latre ħabrani. Ja, ka Safro dërshina atëre għalabe zo judo.
I think we talk about Little Bit Hope, so I'm also traveling for my project, a documentary in Europe here. Because I want to ask how we can keep our hope alive, because we are lesser and lesser in our homeland, especially in Turkey and also in Nedua Plains. And really sometimes I feel hopeless, but I want to be, how can I say, I want to keep alive this hope, because me personally, I will live in my homeland. I'm living in Islam now, but I want to finish my life in homeland. So how we can keep this hope alive?
To keep the spirit alive, that's very important. And that's why my sympathy is with the Syrians, because I can understand your feeling, you know. fighting the big enemies, and you're getting smaller and smaller, and divided, and the Exodus. How you can do that? That's your work. Write books, make films, make a library full with that sort of thought, so other people can consume it. That's very important. And have your windows open so you can contact with other people. Like I say, it's not always that it costs extremely much money or extremely much time, but there's small things, like I just told you, with the mosque and with the school. Other people will do the work. You understand? The journalists will spread out the news, so you don't have to run after everyone yourself. So that's the way of thinking. You have all the rights, Assyrians have all the rights to have attention. Be convinced of yourself and say, okay, we have this right. And, well, to bring it to other people, you have to have a good organization and a good spirit. So, meet people from all Christians, Armenians, Assyrians, Armenian, unite and have fun with each other. So you can enjoy being Assyrian as well, and not always have to cry.
Well, actually, it starts by not asking this question anymore. It starts by believing that even we have 3,000 Assyrians in Dor Habdin, there will be 20,000 after a few years. We have to believe in our own future. And if we continue saying that, oh, we had 500,000 in the Nineveh plains, right now we have 200,000 and it will be less, this will not help the Assyrians in the Nineveh plains. This will not help us as an organization. And if we start to doubt on this, why would UNPO or a journalist believe in our question? So whenever a journalist asks us how many Assyrians are living in the Nineveh plains, I always say 500,000. But I don't know what KDP, the dictator Barzani, will do the coming few years with the Assyrians. We have to believe in our figures, in our numbers, and stop doubting the future of those young people who believe in the future there. And right now, we have more than ever in the Nineveh plains. We have thousands and thousands of soldiers who are taking care of the Nineveh plains. We have a free television station, Rosh, in the Nineveh plains. We have a lot of youngsters who send us messages, films, on Facebook or on Twitter. We have never had this a few years ago. Right now, everybody can see and hear what's going on there. And what are we doing? Having questions about, do we really think that? No. We have to say, Saddam left and Barzani came. Ba'ath Party disappeared, KDP exists. We have to show the people what's going on there and help them with their hope, because they want to stay there and they want to establish a government. And they want to create all those things you and me are dreaming about. But they need us to believe in their future. They need us to speak for them in Europe. And this opportunity we didn't have during the Saifo, during the genocide 100 years ago. Right now we have everywhere Assyrians in the politics. We have doctors. We have whatever you want, we have them. But we are not connected with each other. And if we connect with each other, I really believe that soon we will have an Assyrian region government in the Nineveh plains. And we are not asking something special, because the Kurds have it, the Sunni have it, the Shia have it. So why are we not believing in this? I do. And thousands people in the Nineveh plains do. So stop asking this kind of questions. Thank you.
My question is, do Attila or you gentlemen, do you feel that after everything that has happened to us, like with being slaughtered and persecuted and everything, that maybe we have people that I talk to, they ask pretty much the same question: how do you keep up the hope? Is it possible that we have sort of a victim mentality after everything that's happened to us?
Well, certainly. I think it's normal and it's understandable. But I do agree that this is then part of the problem, and that you need to just go on and try to be constructive and positive. I think that's a common problem of peoples, nations that face these kind of situations. And this is also why I think my organization was created, to put these people together, and so they realize that unfortunately they're in good company in the sufferances, and so to work together for this to change rather than just to commemorate what happened and just like be sad. So yeah, definitely. But as I said, I think this event has already a very constructive approach, and I like that Madam President has such a constructive approach. So there is hope in this sense, because it is only with this change, I think, that you can get something.
Very short. Being victim is okay if you want to get support. But if you build something, you shouldn't feel a victim. You should think the other way. Very constructive. So on one hand, victim, yes, if you can get something from other people. But if you want to build your country, you said, okay, no, we're not a victim anymore, we're looking to the future.
The nice thing is that I really feel that I'm a victim. I have been unconscious, very afraid for the Islam, for the Kurds, for the Turks, for the Arabs. But my children are not. And when I look to some of you, you were born in Europe. You don't have this trauma. You are not afraid. So when you go out, your mother and father used to say, be careful. This word, we hear it every day. Wherever we go, they always give us the message, be careful, be careful. But our children are not infected by the virus of being afraid for the Islam or for the Arabs and the Kurds. So I really believe in this new generation that they will speak, that they will say things, and that they will go every year back to Assyria and give this hope even to the youngsters there. And we need you for this. Not being afraid and not feeling that whoever will hurt us, because we are living in Europe and it's us who should not be afraid anymore.
خدو ميقولوا أمات جورناليست كتب على بكذا على عميدا بس لكم كتب على عميدا يعني جورناليست عموميكم مشاهد وشو لنا على بي complicated شو حقيقته شو ولا زلوزي زند ثري ما هو خالكوا كتب على عميدا أو أسباب لكم كتب على عميدا حق ميفولتي قسان دليتو ما هو خالكوا ما يدي تيما عميدا ليدو شلت بشو الفاينات
The question is regarding the media and whether why they don't write about the Assyrian situation. Is it because it's a very complicated one, or are there political issues behind it? What's the main reason for the media not to writing so much about the Assyrians?
Journalists.
The journalists. Yeah, like you.
Why is there a little attention for the Assyrians in the media? Well, first of all, there's a very small part and a very big problem. You know, you have the Islamic State, you have Saddam Hussein, you have Iran. Big, major problems that can influence the Western world with attacks and things like that. So, it's priority as well. So, if you want to get attention, I told you, you first have to make it possible for journalists to get a story out of Assyria. So if they come there, they should not wait. And I know from experience that sometimes you have to wait 2 weeks. And most of the journalists are gone already. And not that the stories are bad. That's the time I visited the Christians in Mosul. It was 2008. You helped me with it. And it was very, very difficult to get in. But then if you have 2 weeks, and it's very dangerous, a lot of people say, well, I go to another part where the story is easy to pick up. So it's a technical, logistical problem. And then, like I told you as well, that you should have a clear message for the journalists. Journalists in general are very lazy. They prefer a text and they say, okay, just write your name on top of it and you have your story. Easy. So you have to show them around. You should, okay, look at that, otherwise they don't look at it. You should get sort of good working public relation office that can talk to journalists visiting, that can talk to journalists here. And they go around and say, okay, get this specific story. Tomorrow we're going to demonstrate in front of this Turkish mosque they want to build, because we want to build. We want our church. You see, they have a very concrete thing. They can publish it, doesn't take too much time. Maybe you can bring people to it, and then you get the story. Make it easy for them. Make it easy. And you have good stories. You have a story to tell. But you have to show the story. It has to come from both sides.
ترجمنا.
Okay.
بس بدون بسريو بتر 2008 2008 Arnold sent me a message that he wanted to visit Mosul, visit the Nineveh Plains, and I remember that while Arnold was in the Nineveh Plains, he was messaging us like, there is no one who's helping me, there is no one who bring me to Mosul, there is no one who arranging this for me, there is no. So this is really one of our problems, that we have to build this bridge, a professional bridge between Europe, the institutions, the journalists, and what we have in Assyria. And if we don't build this, we cannot sell our stories. And we need our institutions in Europe to build this professional bridge. And if not, we have to stop to complain, we have to stop pointing to the institutions and the journalists, why are you not writing about us? And when I meet Dutch parliamentarians, I always say, when are you coming with me to Assyria? This is one of my first questions. And at the end, one of them will say yes. But then I have to organize it very professional, because they have only 3 days or 2 days time. And this professional way of organizing visits is very important.
Any other questions?
كنت قولي أنا لا أعرف يأخذ لي أفريقيا غلبين وكثير بس بس أنا عرفت تنبر هاي شغلوفه ونحوخ خوزيني نشهوكم شعب كاني أعرف ما حتى كلنا بخانة حتى ما حتى كلنا دربوا حق نخوي بقت كلنا قربينا ما حكينا شيء ذا ما حكينا في قصة ليك كلام قالوا الشروق أحد دكتور حضرت جينا دكتور ما ين برينا ترفع العصب بعد شهور كثيرة ولا تدي ثلاث في سبعين وعدوا هوك خوزن هوك روزن من هاي الحياة فاش كتشير بهولي كلنا فيجينا عشرين عما نخوي أو عما إيزيس أو عما طايل ولا عم مشكلة حشرنا من هاي من كت قرار بولي أنا وشيري
From his perspective, after 9/11, things changed in, let's say, in a media way, maybe. And
Your question is that he's asking both of you that the Assyrians in Germany, especially in Germany, have the feelings that the Germans, when they look to the Assyrians, they think that they are part of the Islam, or they put them in that corner that you are from the Middle East, so you might be dangerous. And the the question is, what should we do and what have we to do to change this view about us?
But does he mean like in the streets, or like when people speak about the Assyrians, they are associated to Islam? Yeah. Or is it that when you walk in the street, people think that you're with... Okay, I don't know, because I've never really perceived this problem. Also because I think that the kind of flag of Christianity is probably the one that was pushed the most. In terms of association to the Middle East in general, and therefore danger, confusion, for that I don't think there is much to do, but I like actually the way some of you Assyrians and other Christians of the Middle East like to flag that you are Christians but Middle Eastern at the same time, and that you're really radicated in territory. So I wouldn't try to detach myself from that. So no, I don't think I can offer a helpful answer here.
I think it's a little bit of perspective as well. That you think, okay, he looks strange, he thinks I'm from the Middle East, he thinks I'm a Muslim. So partly it's in your head as well, I think. And on the other hand, demonstrate. Like, I know that in Egypt, the Copts, they have this small tattooage. So person, he's your friend. You understand what I mean? So, but in general, you have to show very well that Assyrians have a very nice, loyal, sympathetic culture towards the Christians. They are very nice people. They don't bomb. They don't kill people. So you have to say, maybe it's a slogan, Assyrians, the most peaceful people in the Middle East. So you have to demonstrate it as well. You have to make noise. That's so important. So find out nice slogan. Most people think Assyrians, and then but you picture of you, they see you in the streets. Oh no, it's okay. Yeah.
I would be a bit cautious though with antagonizing other groups, kind of wanting to imply that all the other groups in the Middle East are violent as a group rather than.
What's wrong with saying we have Muslim people? It doesn't mean the other ones are aggressive.
There are other groups that are peaceful.
They are already antagonistic, so.
Yeah, but here in Europe.
هم ما خاصة يعني مش كيف ناخذ نحينا قرعنا احنا كوحشينا هن كفرقينا هن باكي ولا هن باكي كوحوزن فرقينا فينا واحنا كوحوزينا هن كوحوزين وما خاصة على تسكم المقال حقوق لازم دوما احنا نعمل وشينا ولادنا ما ندخل بيتنا روحنا وخمين سو بيتنا روحنا توكس مينوس.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, that most people are not looking on the things which are running, they're mostly looking on the things which, on the problems in this world. So because of that, our culture is running, we are not aggressive, because of that they are also not looking on us. I think it's also because of that.
Yes, any other questions?
Hello. أنا خالد بعرف بما إنه صرنا صحفيين أخني جو سوريا بريلا رغم مشاكل كان رابع سوريا بس دي تولدت توتش مشيخة وصليوة خطيلة مقدلة بزايد أو مراني تولدت لي خالة أبخل لي مفكرة بلا اختلا مفكل لون جسورة قردات دي ميت المزل التركية.
Is there anyone that can translate to English?
Yes.
He's speaking a little bit about the Syrian part of Syria, and he says that there's been a lot of destruction of churches and stuff like that, and he wonders why you journalists haven't written about it? Why the media hasn't talked and written about it a lot? So the question is open.
I don't know, I mean, you're being blamed for the gap.
Well, I visited Syria at the beginning of the war through Damascus, but I'm on the blacklist, so they don't allow me anymore in Syria from that part. I went one time with the Kurdish in the north, but let's say they didn't get me what I really wanted it, so I could come in and then look for yourself. But you need guides like this, and if you can bring me in, give me a safe passage, I wouldn't mind at all. But the problem is, if you're a foreign journalist, you look a little bit like me, and everybody will spot you. So you need this very safe way to get in and get out. Because getting in is usually not the problem, but getting out of the story. So I think other journalists would like as well, but it's a logical problem. It's a very dangerous strip. So you need people that you can be trusted, but the story is there, for sure. I would like to make it, but sometimes, and I know it from other wars as well, the wars in Chechnya, sometimes there's a limit that journalists can do, especially foreign journalists. And if I cannot make it, then you have to make it yourself. Make video, make pictures, get statements, get them out and give them to journalists.
Ik ga geven wanneer antwoorden door Nederland. Oké. Mag ik geven wanneer de antwoord? Ja. Veel mensen komen van Syrië en van Irak. Ze komen direct naar... Ja. Dus veel mensen komen van Syrië, van Irak naar het commissariaat. Oké. Als veel mensen komen van Syrië, van Irak direct naar het commissariaat. Heel veel mensen hebben video, ze hebben foto. We gaan alles papieren. Kan je daar soms video en Facebook, ook in YouTube kan je searchen. Veel mensen elke dag komen. Veel mensen ze hebben proef van alles. Misschien, ik weet niet, misschien mag ik helpen, maar ik weet niet. Dus veel mensen ze hebben proef van dat. Ja. Ik weet.
Ja. A journalist is a profession as well, right? Usually I'm a journalist, but it's a profession. To make a good story, a good film, point out what's really going on, you need a professional one. But, well, like you said, you can put things on Facebook and YouTube as well, and don't underestimate the amount of people that are watching these sort of films. But if, in general, if you convince politicians, you should broadcast it, put it in decent newspapers, I understand it. But it's, you know, sometimes it's like there are no real stories from inside Islamic State. It was simply too dangerous. Sometimes there is a limit journalists can do. So I'm willing to go very far, but sometimes they say, if the connection is not good, I cannot do it because I cannot get a story out. Dying for a story you cannot bring out, it's a waste of time and life.
No, and my very, very small recommendation is short and effective clips, better than 30 minutes documentaries. I know you can't cover everything, and they have to focus on only one issue, but unfortunately people today only focus for a couple of minutes, so I think it's much more powerful to have a video that you can share and that everyone can watch in a couple of minutes rather than a whole documentary. I mean, have also one good documentary for people who are really interested and decide to go one step further, but I think short things are effective.
My last question for you, it's regarding the KRG, the Kurds, and throughout the years the Kurds have persecuted the Assyrians, and this happens today as well. What are your thoughts about the European EU and how they react against the KRG from your perspective?
Yeah, it's a very complicated issue because the the Kurds are themselves a people that historically and even now, especially in the other countries, have suffered a lot. And for example, the Iraqi Kurds were also members of our organization in the past, and we still work with the Iranian Kurds as well. So there is this perception that the Kurds are people in need that have suffered a lot and so on, and so that now they're getting basically what they deserved. And people tend to overlook the fact that there are a lot of other people there that are not very happy with what is happening and that have also died and suffered because of them. So I think it's again a bit of like superficiality and wanting to I don't know, show anyway support to a group that is very large in terms of population and that is flagged in the world as like the largest stateless nation and so on. In terms of now specifically with the referendum, I think the EU has been rather shy than supporting. Like I think it has really kept away from making strong statements, and yeah, they are observing, they are following and so on, but they haven't really intervened. I think also because of the overlap with Catalonia and other things for which self-determination referenda are a bit taboo. But why they don't speak up specifically about the Assyrians and how they're suffering under the Kurds, I mean, we get the same feedback from the Turkmen, who also in some places that are in the border of the areas of KRG are having problems. I don't know, I think the EU is not being strong enough in making its voice heard in many issues around the world, but I don't think there's a specific reason for which they're silent on the Assyrian one.
I'd love to say a few words about this. It is normal that every nation, to what you mentioned, that they have decided about their own future and to take care about their culture, etc., etc. So also the Kurdish people have this right. But not creating a country, creating a government, or creating security forces, and at the same time taking our land away, raping our girls, putting young Assyrian boys in prison, pushing us away from our own country. If they continue doing this, then it is every one of you's responsibility, wherever you are, to say this, to write this, to protest this. So we have not to repeat why are they doing this. They are doing this, and we know why they are doing this. But what are we going to do to make this clear? To find friends in Europe beside us to work with us against this policy. It's a dictator. There is no democracy in the KRG. And they are very, very nationalistic. Everything in North Iraq has to be Kurd and Kurdistan. They are changing the names of our cities. They are taking the land of old ladies away. But how strong are we in Europe to show this to the Europeans, to their institution, what the Kurds are doing? This is the focus we should have, and not blaming others or pointing, like, look, to the Kurds, this is our land, this is not enough anymore. We have to make a new step with each other. And building this professional bridge and show to the Kurds that wherever they come to Europe, they will meet Afram, they will meet Maryam, they will meet Nare and Robert, Minos, whoever. And we have to repeat on what they are saying and what they are doing to us and what they took away from us. And let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you to Tia and Tommaso and Arnold as well. You may step down, have a seat. We're going to have a short break around half an hour, so the building of the bridges, it's time for them now. You can go out, mingle a little bit, and we'll be back in approximately half an hour.